The landscape in the city of Columbus has changed considerably since it was officially chartered back in 1834 with a population of only about 4,000. I'd say there's been a major population boom since then, wouldn't you, Javier?
Just a little bit, Charlene. And not only has the population increased, but buildings have come and gone, and the city seems to keep reinventing itself, even in the hardest of times.
One of those times was the Great Depression of the 1930s. The government wanted to get millions of jobless people back to work, so they created the Works Progress Administration, or WPA. This was a New Deal agency that gave people jobs while also building up public infrastructure around the country.
Columbus actually had quite a few of these WPA projects, so we thought it would be interesting to send architectural historian Jeff Darby to explore some of them. I think you'll be surprised at what's on the list.
We're in German Village today, a great neighborhood south of downtown Columbus. And we're going to visit a building that was built by the WPA, the Works Progress Administration. That was a federal program during the Depression, and it was intended to put people back to work. But it was a much bigger program than a lot of people realize. We're going to see one in Schiller Park here in the heart of German Village. And later on today, I think we'll visit some others and learn a lot about what the federal government was doing to try to keep people employed during a very difficult economic time. Hello, Doreen.
Hey, Jeff, how are you doing?
Oh, just fine, thanks.
Good
Thanks
to
for
see you.
coming out today.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So we're exploring the world of the WPA today, I hear.
Yes, and I understand you know quite a bit about it. You've studied it. You know some of the landmarks around town. We're in front of the Caretaker's Cottage here in Schiller Park, which was one of the projects, but it was a really varied program, wasn't it?
It was incredibly varied. I mean, I don't think when people think about WPA, they think about the fact that it affected archaeology, it affected the fine arts, it was construction projects, it was parks, it was sewers. Even the basement of the Ohio State House had a refurbishing from its old stable days during this time.
There was a whole series of state guides, wasn't there?
Right. Yeah,
Ohio
very
has a
thick
guide.
state guides that told you what they were all doing. And in small towns, it was even more important, especially projects that were going to be federally funded anyway, like post offices.
Well, it created such a lasting legacy. So many things are still around. You see, like the post offices and the publications that may be out of print, but they're in libraries everywhere.
Right.
So it really was a far-reaching program.
It is. I think the sadness is in places like Columbus is that very few are marked, if any. And so you don't really get that sense of history. And yet it's so important, whereas in Chicago or New York, you might find more of it. In Columbus, we had such a diversified economy that it didn't really affect us as much in the larger structures as it would have in bigger cities. So the context of this sweet, beautiful little building really started to speak to the fact that as the second oldest park in Columbus, it needed a full-time caretaker who didn't have to come from somewhere else. This idea of working with parks didn't just mean this house was built. It could have meant that there were other things happening, landscaping around the Schiller Monument, sidewalks, brickways, things that may have since then actually disappeared a little bit more. Caretakers' cottages aren't usually used by caretakers anymore.
Well, this Caretaker's Cottage is a good example, but I understand there are other things WPA created in Columbus that aren't necessarily buildings.
That's for sure.
Well, let's go have a look.
All right, I'll follow you.
Doreen, I understand that somehow WPA was involved with City Hall, but it was built in the 1920s, so what's the story?
City Hall was built after the 1913 flood to face the river, which was to really be its front door and be very magnificent. But by the 1930s, the municipal offices were growing to the point where they really needed more space. So the WPA project that made this a whole building is the side we're going to be passing if we turn here on Broad Street. And that's become the new front door for City Hall, so that the orientation completely changed. Okay, we're turning down into Walhalla Drive from Indianola Avenue. We've been heading north between the university area and Clintonville. And this is one of the most interesting of the ravines, incidentally. It's one of three that were once referred to in the 1840s as the Three Gorges, as if they were, you know, spectacular out west Grand Canyon. And this one is truly wooded and lovely. The unsuspecting WPA project is one we're going to be passing under, which is the Calumet Bridge, which if you see from the top, just runs around North High School and looks very much like a nicely kept bridge. But when you see it from underneath, you really get the perspective, the height of it, and really the architectural magnificence of it.
Boy, that is spectacular. Well, Doreen, we've seen, let's see, a cottage, we have seen City Hall, we've seen a bridge. WPA really got around, I guess you'd say. What else is coming up? What else can we see here in the city?
Well, since we're traveling south on High Street and heading toward Ohio State, it's kind of a good reminder that a large part of the WPA projects really dealt with things that were not just post offices, but there was a great emphasis on education. And because Ohio State is a land grant college, WPA funds were used for needs that the universities had. So for instance, Ohio State wound up, and I think surprises people, still has the course called Scarlet. It's a 7-par golf course, and it was designed actually by a landscape architect in 1931, and it would have only come in because it was marketable as both an athletic program and a recreational facility. And then there were other things, like for instance, Ohio Stadium, which was built, of course, in the 1920s. Honor dorms were created for students at Ohio State, but that was not unusual. They were in other land-grant colleges also. But there's a real treasure that's a WPA project that many people don't know exists, and that's what's coming up with the building on our right, Stillman Hall.
Well, let's go see. Oh my, this is marvelous. I'd heard about these, but I've never seen these murals. So tell me the story behind them. How did they get here?
Well, what's really interesting is during WPA, Stillman Hall was itself being built. He was the head of the department, and it was to be for the whole Department of Social Work.
Okay.
So the idea was that Burckhardt and Stillman really informed each other as to what they meant about the human condition. And if you think about it, in the Depression, people realized that poverty was not an individual choice of laziness or not working or not getting an education, but it was really forces that were beyond people's control, and that put them out of work. And there was nothing there that was to be a character flaw. So they took this idea that there's progress in the human condition. Burckhardt was really sort of taken with this idea of trying to show an evolution of how society responds. And so the murals that surround us were doing just that, and ending essentially in 1939 when it was completed.
So Emerson Burckhardt was a Columbus artist.
And what's interesting is he himself came out of a very rural background. His father was a farmer, his brother was still a farmer. And so this is sort of like, of Columbus artists, this is not the George Bellows story of someone born to the manor who perhaps more things in life than advantages than Burckhardt would. So he could transition between the urban and the rural in showing the human condition.
So what are some of what we're seeing here? I mean, there are all sorts of figures that are recognizable. I think I see Edgar Allan Poe, Ralph Waldo Emerson keeping an eye on him, Thoreau lurking in the background, I think, Henry David Thoreau, famous from that pre-Civil War period as a sort of rustic philosopher.
Well, I think that is interesting. Edgar Allan Poe is so prominent, but he is part of that whole New England group. They really represented the intelligentsia of America, but for their thoughtfulness, not necessarily for their wealth. And so in that sense, they're coming from a variety of circumstances themselves. And then you have somebody in here like Pasteur, who with, of course, medicine, again, is looking for the human good, the idea of vaccination and people, you know, we can lift ourselves up. What do you think of the Civil War one?
It's a little strange. It appears to be Lincoln with Grant and Lee. I don't know if they're signing a surrender form. I don't think Lincoln was there for the surrender because he was dead. It's a little odd, but it seems to be a message about, okay, let's heal the country after a terrible
and don't
war.
forget, if you're a land-grant university, you better put Lincoln in. And again, because it's public education, which is sometimes we forget, public university.
That's
It
right.
was about agriculture and mechanical
Yes.
for Ohio State.
Yes,
when they
exactly.
bought. And then we end in 1939 with the piece that's behind you right now, which is really like, it's a Columbus street scene with
Well, it
little
is.
little messages.
Well, there are. There's one that says the Federal Reserve, and of course that came about in 1913, but that was what helped stop the panics and the depressions, 31, 32, 33. The depth of the depression, the Fed wasn't a lot of help,
Right.
and we needed things like the WPA to help get out of it. But celebrating something as obscure to the everyday person as the Federal Reserve, Burkhardt said there was a place for that, control of the money supply, manipulating the money supply in a way that benefited the maximum number of people. It's
Yeah.
interesting interpretations, and
Yeah.
people could take, I suppose, a lot of different stories out of this room.
Right.
Hey, thank you very much for taking me around. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so glad you came.
Where can people learn more about WPA?
Well, interestingly enough, online there is an entire program called Living New Deal, and people can submit things to it that they know in their own hometown. Every state is connected in some way. You can type in Ohio, you can see a lot of the projects. A lot of them that, in fact, some that we've mentioned today are not even in the Living New Deal yet. And it is about the legacy of the New Deal and why it is still important today. So I think that is a really good source to start.
Well, I've learned so much. Thank you for the tour we've had today.
Good, thank you.
As we further explore the ever-changing landscape of Columbus, I think something that's worth discussing is what's up with all these buildings being replaced with parking lots.
I know, right? It's nice to have places to park, but it's really sad to see some beautiful old buildings torn down. Sometimes they're too far gone to save, but sometimes not.
To get more perspective on why this happens, we invited preservationists Nancy Ritchie and Randy Black to visit some of these parking sites. Along the way, they talk about the buildings that once stood there, as well as the city's past and present approaches to urban development.
We are here today to talk about parking lots. We have a lot of them in downtown Columbus, fewer than we used to have, but we still have an awful lot of parking lots that at one time had historic buildings on them. And we thought it would be interesting to start at this parking lot today because this was a pretty significant loss for the city. I don't know if you remember this building or not.
I started with the city in 1993, which I believe is the same year that this incident
January
happened.
of '93, right.
And I'm not really familiar with the physical building, so I'd like to talk about it because this is an example of loss that we've seen turned into parking lots over and over again.
Yes. It was a pre-Civil War Italian villa. So you can imagine it sat in the middle of the lot. It had a big square tower. The entrance, although it was painted black, was a double entrance, round arched, all carved stone.
It complemented the buildings to the
Very
east.
much so. It was the entrance into the East Town Street Historic District. So it was a cornerstone building. This was a neighborhood where fairly well-off people lived. The building right next door was the Fred Lazarus house, and 2 doors down was Ralph Lazarus. So anybody who grew up in Columbus knows F&R Lazarus was Fred and Ralph. There really was an effort to try to preserve it. And our disclaimer is my husband Jeff and I were part of that. With the idea of preserving the historic building, but also building new condominiums facing the library park, which was a combination of old and new, but it made the economics work. And we were really trying to work with the owners and their attorney and others, but time ran out and they were able to tear down the building, and they did. One of the things about parking lots is they're businesses, but they're required to make any urban design contribution to the city. And there's no reason why this couldn't have been beautifully landscaped
With landscaping.
or designed in a way that it isn't just this. And it was torn down 30 years ago. So we've had this for 30 years.
And since that time, I think there's been a lot of movement in terms of if there's a parking lot requested in a historic district of any of the commissions, landscaping is going to be an important
Yes,
component
it
of
has
that.
to be. The good thing that came out of this is the Downtown Commission was formed.
Yes.
And part of the impetus was to not just have buildings torn down for parking, that there be a review process, and if a building's torn down, they weren't allowed to tear down that building until they had a commitment to build something on the site. So we'll continue to have buildings, not just parking lots. Can you think of others that were big losses that maybe led to some kind of change in policy?
In the short north, on the Victorian Village side, a hotel was lost there. It took a long time to refill that lot. There was a lot of discussion about whether that should happen. Also, there was another really important one, the Seneca. In fact, I attended several environmental court hearings on the alley by the Seneca.
Yeah.
It was very close to being lost. And the reason it didn't was because of the Downtown Commission and that it was individually
And
listed.
it's been rehabbed in its apartments.
So it's an
And
example of
yeah.
success.
Yeah.
Once a building's gone, it's gone forever. And you can't adaptively reuse a vacant lot until you rebuild.
And there are good economic incentives now to help people
There are.
rehabilitate.
There are.
So with a lot of imagination, a lot of creativity, we're seeing developers around Columbus do amazing work.
We are.
Especially just recently. And I know you were involved with the municipal power plant, the East Market that was ready for demolition, could have been a parking lot in that area. One of the ones that comes to mind for me is in the Brewery District. The King Gambrinus is still there, but the August Wagner Brewery. Now, it's not exactly a parking lot, it's a little green space, but I remember when that building was torn down.
There are examples of cities that have approached the vacant properties in a little different way. I think of Pittsburgh and I also think of Cincinnati, especially over the Rhine.
Yes.
Many, many buildings were sort of mothballed and kept. And the 20-year ago trip that I took, it looked pretty rough,
It was very rough.
but it's grown exponentially now. It's a place to be. And I would argue that one of the attractions is in that city and in Pittsburgh and other cities, one of the attractions to folks is the buildings are still there.
Yes.
In our case, we've lost an awful lot of buildings. It raises another opportunity for infill, but loss of historic buildings is loss of character in my
Yeah,
mind.
we're not creating pre-Civil War buildings anymore.
No. This has been really wonderful to talk about this here in the East Town Street Historic District, but I've got a site not far from here that I'd like to share with you and see what your thoughts are.
Great. Love
Really-
to see it.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Nancy, we are at Main and South High Street. And this is another example of a parking lot where buildings have been taken down and there's no landscaping here. This is also the location of the former Franklin Federal Savings and Loan Building, which was on the corner here of High and Main. And also the most recent demolition was the Main Street Bar. And interestingly enough, the Main Street Bar building was torn down just recently. And down the block here, about a half a block away, there's a building very similar to that it was rehabbed, saved, with two new builds
Yes.
beside it.
That's a great example of combining old and new. And that's really what we're dealing with in this city. We have lots of pockets of parking lots with one or two historic buildings standing alone. And the wonderful, exciting, creative challenge is how do you incorporate those into a new development? And to me, the most exciting thing that can happen is a bit of the past and a bit of the present and future. It takes a little more work, sure. It takes a little more creativity, but it can be done.
After having talked about these two recent sites and all the vacant lots all over town, I thought it might be important for us to sort of consider the future use of cars, the future need for parking, and what changes do you see may be happening, and I can talk about that as well.
People are going to be driving cars. We recognize that. Is this the highest and best use and the best way to provide parking? If you're building in a downtown area, infrastructure means structured parking garages, multi-level parking garages, not on the main streets, but kind of built into the system so that people can park, like the one, that went with City Center that's right there. It's a big parking garage, but imagine how much surface parking would be needed.
I think that there are two points that I always like to point out to commissions and to clients. The design of structured parking doesn't have to be just a cement building that looks like a parking garage.
Right.
There are all kinds of design solutions for that fit in with the neighborhood.
Exactly.
That's the first piece. Second piece that I've talked to developers about, and sometimes they push back on this, but I think there needs to be a lot of consideration about when parking levels are being added to a building, a new build, or a parking garage standalone. Being able to convert that to another use outside of parking is something that successful cities are looking at now.
To give you an example, right behind us, the Julian, it's a former industrial building. They designed the parking inside the industrial building, but the way they designed the parking, if that parking isn't needed, they can convert it to more apartments.
Thanks a lot, Nancy. This has been wonderful. Both sites were great to visit, and
Good conversation.
really good conversation, good analysis.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Javier, have you ever driven down a road and wondered what was there before, like maybe a path or a trail?
Oh yeah, and I'm pretty sure whoever was forging that trail was probably on foot or horseback.
No doubt. Well, one viewer wondered if many of our highways used to be trails, so we decided to ask our Curious CBus team to look into it. Here's what they found.
WOSU's Curious CBus answers your questions about our region, its history, and its people. Today's question comes from Karen Wolford. She wants to know if the highways we drive in Ohio today follow the same path as Native American trails and wagon trails from centuries ago. The short answer is yes. Many of Ohio's major roadways lie on Native American trails that were later used by white settlers. Renowned Ohio archaeologist William Mills stated the fact plainly. In 1914, he wrote, "The importance of the Aboriginal trails of Ohio to the settlement and development of the state can hardly be overestimated." Before Europeans arrived, many Native American trails crisscrossed the state, but one particularly significant trail cut a north-south path directly through the heart of present-day Columbus. Much of what we call U.S. Route 23 was once known as the Scioto Trail. It was the great highway of the Shawnee tribe. From the fishing waters of Sandusky Bay, it led south along the Scioto River to present-day Portsmouth. From there, crossing the Ohio River gave access to the hunting grounds of Kentucky. There, it connected with another Native American trail known as the Warrior's Path, and together they were among the most traveled routes of the pioneer days. After the Revolutionary War, white settlers used the trail to travel north from Portsmouth. Over the next few decades, many cities we know and love were founded along the trail: Chillicothe, Circleville, Columbus, and Delaware. In the 1820s, Colonel James Kilbourne, the founder of Worthington and a representative in the General Assembly, lobbied heavily for a proper road to connect Columbus to Lake Erie. The 106-mile-long Columbus and Sandusky Turnpike was opened for business in 1834. People who paid a toll might have expected a well-made gravel road, but too often it was nothing but mud. In protest, disgruntled travelers reportedly destroyed the toll gates on more than one occasion. Learning from those mistakes, the southbound Columbus and Portsmouth Turnpike was made of gravel construction in 1847. In the early 1900s, as automobiles became more and more popular, Ohio invested in its highway system, paving roads and adding clearly marked lanes. In 1926, the road was incorporated into the United States numbered highway system and became U.S. Route 23. At that time, drivers could zoom up and down the state at 35 miles per hour without breaking the speed limit. So today, when you drive on Route 23, you're traveling on a road almost identical to the Scioto Trail, a path blazed by the Native Americans centuries ago. If you have a question for Curious C-Bus, head over to wosu.org/curious to submit your idea, vote on which question we should investigate next, and see what we've covered so far.
Thanks for being with us, and remember you can catch all our episodes on YouTube or columbusneighborhoods.org.
Plus, see our stories on the WOSU mobile app. And you can follow us on social media. We'll see you back here next week on Columbus Neighborhoods.